Former Vice President Dick Cheney's goal in defending the lawyers who authorized torture was to mobilize Republicans to warn Democrats against investigating how he, Cheney, got those lawyers to authorize that torture. Then, mission accomplished. Our fourth story tonight, Republicans ratchet up the stakes. At a hearing today, Attorney General Eric Holder was asked about renditions, U.S. transfer of terror suspects to third countries, renditions that occurred in the Clinton administration. The threat was unmistakable. If Holder goes after Bush lawyers who okayed torture, let alone top Bush officials such as, Cheney, then Republicans will go after Democrats whom they say knew about torture, and also they'll go after Holder himself.
We're going to ask lawyers who were asked to give legal opinions, we're going to investigate them, jeopardize their career, second-guess them, look back. Then where does that stop? I mean, do we not also have to look at the people who ask for those techniques, at people who approve those techniques, at members of Congress who knew about and encouraged the techniques, perhaps? Or, in your case, in the Clinton administration, we don't know what the interrogations were then. Perhaps you do, and the question would be whether you approve them.
Senator Alexander's threat, however, came just one day after an interview appeared in which Mr. Cheney claimed he opposes torture investigations because he wants to protect the little guy, in this case, top lawyers in the U.S. Justice Department. One of those lawyers, now Judge Jay Bybee, having already got Bush officials to plead his case within the Obama Justice Department, is now reportedly lobbying individual members of Congress himself. The Las Vegas Sun, quoting Bybee's Congresswoman, Democrat Nina Titus, saying she and Bybee have not yet met, but, quote, I'd like to hear from him if he thinks he made the right decision interpreting the law, but I also will not hesitate to make it clear to him that I absolutely disagree with his interpretation. It remains unclear why Mr. Cheney or any top Bush officials would want to protect rather than punish people who, we are supposed to believe, misled the Bush administration into violating international treaty and U.S. law, damaging America's reputation, and fueling anti-American terrorism around the world. Unless, of course, Bush and Cheney told them to, especially considering that when the Abu Ghraib scandal broke and Mr. Cheney had a chance to defend the little guys who implemented his policies there, like Lindy England, who did a year and a half in prison, and Charles Grainer, still in prison, Mr. Cheney instead said the little guys there had done outrageous things and that he, Cheney, did not know of any other abuse outside Abu Ghraib, despite the fact that he had secretly signed off on waterboarding 2 years earlier. Joining us now is Iraq and Afghanistan veteran Brandon Friedman, now author of The War I Always Wanted and vice chair of VoteVets.org. Great, thanks for your time tonight, Brandon.
Thanks for having me on, Keith.
How have you been able to assess how service members and vets feel about Mr. Cheney's current crusade to protect the little guy?
Well, when Dick Cheney came out the other day and he said that he was looking out for the little guy, he conveniently left out the military and the troops. He covered for CIA officers. He talked about covering for the lawyers, but he left out the troops. So what has essentially happened is you have the troops now who've been left holding the bag for torture enthusiasts like Mr. Cheney himself. At this point, the only people who've been prosecuted, the only people who've been fully vilified are troops. And frankly, to me, that's not fair. And I think that's how most people in the military view it, too.
Strategically, what do you see as the former vice president's ultimate goal in protecting whoever it is he considers to be the little guy, if it's not the people who were taking the orders at the ground level?
Well, he's not concerned for the quote-unquote little guy, if that's how he wants to refer to the military. I think it's very clear to me that Mr. Cheney is looking out for himself. He's looking to cover for people like former Defense Secretary Rumsfeld, Paul Wolfowitz, and anybody else whose path would lead directly to him. Because at the end of the day, Dick Cheney knows that the buck stops with him, and he knows that these are policies that were engineered by the Bush administration, and he knows that he bears responsibility for that, as do the people who surround him.
If Senator Alexander proves right that the Obama administration has to choose between investigating nobody or investigating everybody, including Clinton officials on the subject of renditions, what should happen then?
Well, look, Keith, we're a nation of laws, so everything has to remain on the table. But in my view, I'm not so much concerned with going after people in the military, people who were working at the CIA level. Those are people who were doing their duty, who were, I presume, carrying out policies that they thought were lawful. What I'm more concerned with is in going after the people who came up with these ideas. I mean, what I don't understand is who in the Bush administration decided all of a sudden that it was okay to waterboard people, that it was okay to sacrifice our values as Americans, because that's not how we treat prisoners of war. It's not what we did in Desert Storm. It's not what we should have done in this war. What I want to know is, when did that be okay? Who decided that was okay? And who wanted to give the order to tell the CIA or to tell the military to carry out these things? Those are the people that I want to go after and that I would like to see dealt with, because they bear the responsibility and we need to hold them accountable. Because here's the thing. At bottom, the terrorists are not using they're not using rendition, what Senator Alexander was talking about with Attorney General Holder. They're not using rendition for propaganda. What they're using for propaganda is Guantanamo Bay and waterboarding. So I want to find out the people who are responsible for that, because that has put our troops in danger. And that's my priority, and that's my perspective from where I'm coming from. I want to see people held accountable for that.
Brandon Friedman of VoteVets.org, contributor to the Huffington Post. As always, sir, great thanks.
Thanks for having me on.